Welcome back, everyone. We'll begin, Tasia will chant for opening the sutra first.
An unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to, remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's teaching.
And I'll share a brief statement about the practice of dana. In Buddhism, when practitioners share their understanding of the teachings and practice, it is offered freely as a practice of dana paramita. Dana is a Pali word that means generosity or to give freely, and this practice is done without expectation of getting something in return. This is the spirit of speaking about the Dharma. Other ways to practice dana are to offer support to those who share the teachings, to support places of spiritual practice, and to give without judgment or expectation when opportunities arise. Those who share the teachings at Great Tree do so on a dana basis. Please support their practice by giving what you can. And you can do this directly to Rev Konjin. Thank you for being with us this morning. And I'll share the a online website where you can offer dana, as well as a physical address if you'd like to mail in dana.
This morning, we welcome Rev Konjin Gaelyn Godwin as our Dharma speaker. Reverend Setsuan Konjin Gaelyn Godwin is the abbess of Houston Zen Center, and she's connected nationally and internationally with Buddhist teachers and organizations, and serves as director of the International Division of Soto Zen North America, which is a department of Soto Zen headquarters that are in Japan. She received ordination as a Zen priest in 1991 from Tenzin Reb Anderson, who is the senior Dharma teacher at San Francisco Zen Center, from whom she also received Dharma transmission in 2003. In 2005, she was appointed Kai Kyoshi, which is formal recognition from Japan. Her Soto Zen lineage is through Dogen Zenji and Suzuki Shunryu Daiyosho, who is the founder of San Francisco Zen Center. Her Zen training began there in San Francisco in 1985 and continued for 18 years there, including 12 years at Tassajara Zen Mountain Center. She also trained in Japan at Hoshinji with Harada Seiki Roshi, and at Zuoji, and also with Robert Aiken Roshi of the Diamond Sangha in Hawaii. These days, she oversees Houston Zen Center's campus and teaching program. She guides the practice committee, participates in board meetings and planning, leads sesshin and practice periods, trains head students, and has also ordained priests. She's given lay Dharma entrustment to 4 senior lay practitioners who now serve as Zen teachers. She has 2 Zen Dharma heirs. She leads a prison meditation group and participates in socially engaged projects for the benefit of the underserved in Houston and elsewhere. And on the home front, she has 2 stepdaughters and 4 grandchildren. So we appreciate her finding time to come and talk with us. And Tasia would like to say a few words of welcome now.
Thank you so much for coming. I mentioned when I was meeting with the Houston Zen Center that Konjin Roshi and I have a very similar past, and because Tassajara and Hoshinji with Harada Seke Roshi, but and that Harada Seke Roshi used to get us mixed up. So somehow we have a very similar energy, although I think she's a lot more ambitious than I am. But anyway, I welcome you, and I'm very grateful that you're talking about Sangha. I've offered that subject to everyone that's speaking on Saturdays, and I'm so grateful for those of you who picked it up for our year of the Sangha. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Tejo Roshi. I feel like in a way I've been following you around the world. So I followed Tejo Roshi to Japan. I appeared after she had left Seke Roshi, and he really liked me because he thought that I was Tejo for a long time. So, and we meet together often at our international gatherings, and it's, you know, Tejo Roshi is a guide and a senior Dharma teacher for me. So I'm super grateful to see you and very thankful to be invited. And also very happy. Thank you, Trey. Thank you, Anne. You've been really great. So it's wonderful to see you. I wish we could be in person, but we're learning. I'm learning how to kind of feel some energy through these little Zoom screens. It's great to see your faces and see your backgrounds. It's always nice. I like it when people show the background instead of blurring it, so you can see, although I did clean up a little bit of the mess in my office so you wouldn't get a complete picture of what's going on. I'm very happy to talk about Sangha. Sangha Jewel, one of the things I thought about during our meditation a few minutes ago, sorry, thoughts do arise and then they drift away, but I did remember this thought coming up while we were sitting together. Jewels are very strong. Of course, they're precious and beautiful, but they're strong and they can take a lot of pressure. Some of them are even formed by pressure. So that aspect of our Sangha Jewel is a very important thing, and it's kind of a theme with what I want to talk about today. I also want to raise the theme of Sangha Spring, because spring is happening now. We're seeing it all around. I think you're seeing it in North Carolina, showing up. Things are coming up out of the ground. And here, we're honoring it by having a lot of garden days outside and working with the land. It's a very pleasant time in Houston. In fact, later this month, we're having, on our land, we're having a freeing of the animals. The SPCA has reached out because they know we've got this 40 acres, and they've asked if we can accept 15 to 30 small little creatures that they've rescued. And so we'll have a big ceremony and release them near the creek. I'm very happy about that. And Sanghas have a kind of spring-like quality too. If we really think about it, we ebb and we flow. We're kind of far apart. We're undercover. Things are dark and cold. And then the Sangha itself comes back and shows its strength and blossoms again. So it's been a dark, cold time sometimes during this pandemic. And yet the strength of our Sanghas shows this new vitality. I want to say something about our lineage, and then I'm going to talk about two other Sanghas that I'm finding very encouraging these days. But Dogen Zenji, the founder of Soto Zen in Japan, our great lineage master, wrote in the Tenzo Kyokun that the instructions to the head cook, which is a very important document. He wrote when he moved into the North Mountains of Japan. He really focused on nurturing the Sangha, and one of the ways he nurtured it was by honoring and describing the roles of the officers of the Sangha. So there would be a treasurer and a head cook and a guide of the meditation hall and a director, all these roles. And so the Tenzo Kyokun is the description of the job of the head cook. And he wrote that two of the responsibilities of the head cook, which I want to bring out right now, are one, to know what is in the storehouse, know the ingredients that are in the storehouse, really know them, be familiar with what's in the pantry. And the second is to create a nourishing meal for practice and health using the ingredients that you have. So this is a real key guideline for Tenzos. We have to know what we already have, and we certainly have the vow to make a nourishing meal that supports the Sangha life of the individuals and of the whole Sangha, creates harmony. But it's also kind of a metaphor for individual practice, as all the roles in the monastery are. They simultaneously support the Sangha and develop the individual. So it's kind of a metaphor for individual practice to get to know the ingredients in here. What are the contents in here? What do I have to work with? It's not identical, and it's not always the same. And then to make something beautiful out of this, make something beautiful and useful and uniquely responsive to the world out of what's in this storehouse. So sometimes joining a Sangha, I think we can see it in our own Sanghas and other Sanghas. People arrive, we arrive because I want to take care of this one. So the Sangha already exists and I need to take care of this one, and I benefit from the Sangha. But also we are, by arriving, even a beginner who has no concept that they're of use to the Sangha, a beginner walking in to the temple, walking through the door, benefits the Sangha. Doesn't it feel good to have a newcomer walk in? It's like, there it is. They're nourishing the Sangha by coming, answering the call. And the same, then it can happen in a conscious way. So after a while of practice, I'm there for myself. I'm there to wake up, maybe reduce stress, maybe learn something about how the mind works. And then there can be a realization that I have to take care of this Sangha, or my great honor would be to take care of others. And that's how I take care of myself, perhaps. But a change happens, and we see the kind of bidirectionality of Sangha life, multi-directionality of Sangha life. So in studying the ingredients of Sangha life, there are two things I want to bring up that have been very encouraging for me, very nourishing for me. And it's about the challenges that Sanghas face. So the beloved community, as Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King called it, there are many beloved communities or Sanghas, and challenges are faced. And the first one I want to talk about is the story of, a reference to the story of the earliest Japanese American Buddhist communities who came to the United States, and how they thrived through hardship. And Ryukin Duncan Williams has been presenting this around the country. He's really unearthed a lot of good information about how the Japanese American communities who were put into prison camps, basically after Pearl Harbor, how they maintained something about their Sangha life. And when I look at it, I see they maintained very strong Sangha ties in the camps, many, and it was incredibly hard. He recently gave a presentation, and I can put a link for this in the chat later on, but he gave a presentation last week on a new show that's been opened at the Japanese American National Museum in Los Angeles, and he gave a guided tour of the show. So we were there like this, live, but then they recorded it, so I recommend it. What they've done is collect many of the artifacts and journals and records of life in those camps. And during that time, after Pearl Harbor, people of Japanese descent were seen as really threatening. They'd already been seen as threatening, but after Pearl Harbor, there was kind of a justification to round everybody up and move them into camps. The first who were targeted were Japanese Buddhist priests. And Christianity didn't necessarily protect people, but when they were rounded up, but it did protect them a little bit in the camps. So the Christians were given a few more resources to practice. So the Buddhists went about recreating their ceremonies, and the Buddhist priests remained Buddhist priests. So once you're a Buddhist priest, you're always a Buddhist priest. And they maintained their role as a center point of the Sangha. Ceremonies were recreated, all the ceremonies. So this is part of what holds Sangha life together, engaging in ceremonial activity together. And another part of this question that I want to raise up is that how do we deal with it when we face the question of what is a Sangha? Because the Japanese American community had created temples in their own communities. What is it to be a Sangha when you're removed from your building and you're even removed from each other because people were scattered around in different camps? What is a Sangha? If we don't have our place, we don't have our familiar friends, we have none of the ceremonial objects that we treasure, that we've made or brought from Japan, how does a Sangha meet this challenge? So in the story that Duncan Williams shows, people were able to recreate their Sanghas inside the camps, and they're beautiful altars, hand-carved altars that were created by some of the craftsmen inside the camp that are in the show. Ceremonial objects were recreated, costumes and decorations were recreated. I don't want to minimize the injustice of it all and the pain and the grief of it all. I just want to say that Sanghas face amazing challenges, and then how we meet it is part of what the Sangha Jewel enables us to do. So in my view, the ceremonies that we engage in, including the ceremony of Zazen, which we just engaged in, is part of the strength that holds us together. The ceremonies of Zazen, the ceremonies of precept ceremonies, renunciation, these are the ceremonies that hold us together as a Sangha, even when we face great pressure. Great Master Joshu, famous for all sorts of things. Let's see, find my story of Great Master Joshu. He was famous for all sorts of little pithy sayings, famous for instance, a monk asking him, does a dog have Buddha nature? And Joshu said, no. But in this story, a visitor came to ask Joshu, what is the Sangha? The master said, what else is there but it? And then the monk said, what is a person of the Sangha? The master said, me and you. So that answer, me and you, has stayed with me for a very long time. I think about that because the Sangha is me and you. It's me and you, me and you. A Sangha is not just me. It's the resonance of me and you. And that resonance extends right now, but it also extends under really difficult situations. There's nobody outside of it, Joshu was saying. But it's precisely the me and you-ness of it. So the Sangha to exist doesn't require to be in the same place, but we feel its strength. And a strong Sangha can do what we're doing right now. extend into multiple dimensions and still feel the Sangha-ness of the jewel. Apparently, Sangha means to bring together into a group as a community. And I looked it up. It can also refer to a flock of crows or a herd of deer. But in our Zen literature, it refers to the community of practitioners usually. So one author says that traditionally one joins the Sangha by a formal act of renouncing all possessions and worldly relations, and then goes forth into the homeless life of a monk or nun. So our traditions are a little bit different over the centuries, but we do still renounce significant possessions. So in Jukai ceremonies and our full moon ceremonies, we renounce all of our past evil karma. We renounce all karma. And even right now, there's a renunciation going on. So we've all renounced what we would otherwise be doing on this Saturday morning to be here with our Sangha. So renunciation is very powerful, a constant choice, and it's even more powerful when we recognize that that's what we're doing. So to be gently aware that I have renounced other alternatives, I've made a choice to be here, empowers us, makes us even stronger. So my next story of a very resilient, strong Sangha involves another kind of difficulty, even more challenging difficulty, and another kind of courage. And at the heart of it, of this particular challenge to a Sangha, a community, is a kind of radical hopefulness. But again, it's a very, very, very difficult challenge because this Sangha community was facing the collapse of its way of life. So in the story of the Japanese American Sanghas, they faced incredible injustice and hardship and life-threatening incarceration, not to be minimized. But the way of life overall was shared. The reality was shared. They were in prison and not out of prison, but the reality was somewhat similar. But in this next story, reality itself is going to change completely. So first, another story from Joshu. A monk asked, when great difficulties come upon us, how can they be avoided? Master Joshu said, welcome. A monk asked, when great difficulties come upon us, how can they be avoided? The master said, welcome. So I take this to mean we do welcome everything that comes. We even welcome the avoidance. Welcome. So in the case of Japanese American communities, their entire communities were under threat, and the return after the war brought them back in greatly changed circumstances. But again, basic reality remained the same. Some communities were able to get their temples back. Some families were able to get their farms and houses back. Some were not. They had to find different ways. It was, a terrible, terrible time. But for this next community, these are the Crow people. So I've been reading about the Crow people, especially the great chief known as many excellences, or sometimes known as plenty coups, coup as in making a coup. So in the great change that was facing the Crow people, there's much grief, but here in this story of how the chief and the Sangha went through the great change, there is something radical in the hope. And I feel, since we are in the world facing great, great change, stories like this can be seeds for how we're going to face it. So the Crow people were facing, eventually they realized, the end of reality as they knew it. Their life was the way of life of hunting buffalo and going to war against the other tribes, which was a lot of what they did for a couple of hundred years, was very threatened. we can't really know. We can't really relate to what that was like. But one way of thinking about it is the end of concepts of what was valuable and what a correct response would be. Concepts came crashing down. And in our Zen literature, we often study our attachment to concepts and how we should release our attachment to concepts. Very challenging, very important. Here was a situation where there was no choice. The concepts would not work in the new reality. The Crow people called themselves, in the Crow language, children of the large-beaked bird. So they referred to themselves as children of the large-beaked bird, but Westerners decided that that meant crow. And so they're known as crow now, but we don't know any longer what the bird was, a mythical bird, actual bird. And now they live mostly in Montana and Wyoming. But before that, of course, they roamed the middle part of the continent. There are interesting stories about how they chose to live in Montana and Wyoming. Some of it was pressure on their land, but that was also a holy spot for them from ancient times. They ended up together on their land. They maintained their Sangha, and they are very proud that they remained undefeated by the white military. So they experienced a shift in reality, and they even had to renounce their old ways in order to remain together. They faced anxiety, and that's one of the things I want to talk about, because they faced anxiety as a community. And it's notable that often anxiety seems like something I have to solve myself. If I feel anxiety, it's my problem and I must deal with it. But they were able to recognize that the anxiety that they were feeling was a shared emotional territory, because they really didn't know what was going to happen. And an important piece of their strength came from their great chief, Plenty Coups, or Many Excellences, from a dream he'd had as a young boy before it became apparent that reality was going to shift. And the Crow people oriented themselves, perhaps still orient themselves, as a community based on information from the spirit world. So young people would go through a sweat, not exactly a sweat lodge, a sweat bath, and then into the wilderness and fast. And then after some days, they might have a dream, and then they bring that back to the elders, who then interpret the dream. So the one member of the Sangha has the dream, but a group of the elders decides if it's a meaningful dream or if it's really, they say, a no account dream, or it could be a wish dream. But significant dreams are taken as meaningful, and then predictions for the future, decisions about how to behave in the future, are taken from information from the spirit realm, from these other realms that we have access to. So in this dream, in the dream that Plenty Coups or Many Excellences had, it wasn't a dream about a predictable event. It wasn't a plan, like now is a good time to hunt buffalo, which is often the information that's gathered, or now is a time to go to war against the Sioux and we will be victorious. It wasn't like that. It was a dream that the elders saw was about a total collapse of reality. So they held it for decades. And in this dream, young Many Excellences, he was 9 years old, he dreamed that a buffalo bull, who was also a person, came out of a hole in the ground. And then he became a man person. And he pointed to the hole and asked Plenty Coup to follow him down into the hole, which he did. And underground, he saw countless, unimaginably countless numbers of buffalo, bulls and cows and calves. And then he followed man person out of the ground, and man person pointed back to the hole and said, "Look." And then out of the hole in the ground streamed all the buffalo, covering the whole land as far as they could see, which is what this continent used to be like. Uncountable numbers of buffalo used to roam around this continent. So Plenty Coups saw all of these buffalo coming out and covering the ground as far as he could see. And then they kept going and there were no buffalo, which is an unimaginable concept to Native people at that time. And then the man person pointed to the hole in the ground and said, look. And out of the ground came some strange creatures, kind of spotted in different colors with long tails. And they came out, but instead of behaving like a herd, like the buffalo, they gathered in these little clans, and some of them laid down, and they made these kind of noises, but not as loud and as powerful as buffalo. And then they also left. Those were cows, but he didn't know what they were at the time, but he saw them covering the plain. And then there's another part of the dream, which I'll say, but this dream did come true years later. There would be no more buffalo, only cows. And in one of the late life interviews that Plenty Coups gave, the interviewer said, tell us about your life before and after being here. And Plenty Coups said, when the buffalo were gone, nothing happened. And of course, things did happen. He did lead his tribe and they did become farmers, and he demonstrated how to become a farmer. But as far as real reality was concerned, once the buffalo were gone, nothing happened. Many years later, after they took up farming and thrived as a tribe and stayed together, there's another important part of this dream that I want to say. So in this dream, there are several parts, but in the dream, Plenty Coups, or many excellences, saw an old and feeble man sitting under a tree. The man person asks if he recognizes him. No. The man person says that the old man is you. That's you yourself in many years. But there's only one tree. He's sitting under it as an old man, and the man person tells him that there's going to be a tremendous storm in which the four winds gather together and begin a war against the forest, and all the trees are knocked down but that one. So that prediction was something that the elders were very alarmed by, because in their understanding, a storm would come, and a prediction of a storm meant measures had to be taken, but usually it was one storm from one of the four directions. But in this predictive dream, all four storms came together, all four. There was no way that they would be able to meet it. They knew it was the end of something because the four storms had gathered together. They knew everything was going to be knocked down, but in that one remaining tree is a chickadee lodge. So chickadees are chattery birds, very beautiful, very active little birds. And the crow chief would come to honor the chickadee bird. So I'll read this part. The chickadee is linked. This is what the dream vision told him. The chickadee is least in strength, but strongest of mind among his kind. Chickadee is willing to work for wisdom. Chickadee person is a good listener. Nothing escapes her ears, which she has sharpened by constant use. Whenever others are talking together of their successes and failures, there you will find the chickadee person listening to their words. But in all her listening, she tends to her own business. She never intrudes, never speaks in strange company, and yet never misses a chance to learn from others. She gains successes and avoids failure by learning how others succeeded or failed, and without great trouble to herself. The lodges of countless bird people were in the forest when the four winds charged it. Only one person is left unharmed, the lodge of the chickadee person. Develop your body, but do not neglect your mind, many excellences. It is the mind that leads a person to power, not strength of body. So that's what buffalo person, man person told him that he carried from age 9 into his great old age. Develop your body, but do not neglect your mind, Plenty-Ku. It is the mind that leads a person to power, not strength of body. So Plenty-Ku and his whole tribe were basically great warriors. Their lives were organized about when it was time to go to war, when it was time to plant their ku in the ground and not back up, and ferocious warriors and hunters of buffalo. And here's a prophetic dream coming at age 9 to somebody to listen to, telling them to be like Chickadee. And they took it seriously. So eventually, when the buffalo disappeared and Plenty-Ku had become a powerful chief, remembered the dream always oriented himself to listening and caring for the people. He started telling his people, we have to listen to the white man, we have to listen to what's happening. After they were living on their land and reduced only 2 million acres out of all the other millions of acres, he encouraged his children and grandchildren to go to school, become lawyers. So even now, the Crow people are very strong and in maintaining their treaties and fighting back because of this message from the Chickadee person. So for the Crow Sangha, dreams were access to a spirit-filled realm. And I want to say that in the early days of Soto Zen, dreams were very powerful. Dogen Zenji made decisions based on dreams. And Keizan Zenji also considered dreams to be powerful messages about how to guide the Sangha. So one way to look at that dream of Plenty-Ku, many excellences, is that it was a manifestation of anxiety. If I were to take that dream to a dream interpreter, they would say, you're anxious that things are really going to change. But again, he took the dream to the elders. They all recognized the anxiety in it, tribal anxiety, and they chose together how to hold the dream. He told them that they will hold on to their land if they make use of their best skills. And that's the message of the Chickadee. So it's also knowing inside their own skills. And they were quite adept at encouraging certain skills in each other. So they were able to pay attention to the ingredients inside individuals and inside their sanghas in order to keep their sangha vibrant and effective. When Plenty-Ku decided to tell a white man about the dream, he was an old man, and it was because he had recognized that having it written down was important. They weren't a writing culture. They kept their stories alive through verbal repetition. But he decided to sit down with the white man and tell him his dream and tell him the history of the before time. And it was because he knew it needed to be preserved in this new reality. He was a very honored chief, Native American chief, and he was present at the creation of the tomb of the unknown soldier in 1921. And one of the most moving things at that time, he came in his full warrior regalia with a war bonnet and his ku stick that a Crow warrior would put down. And if they put that ku stick in the ground, they would not back up. You would either die maintaining your ground or you would go forward with your ku stick. So at the tomb of the unknown soldier, when they were interring the remains and closing out the war, he took off his war bonnet and put it on the tomb, and he took his ku stick and put it on the tomb. Again, the meanings are so many, but one of the meanings is my way of life is here. And now a new way of life will meet me when I go back. He also, when he told the story to the white man, he was sitting under a lone tree on the reservation, and he said that the dream had come true. Here he was, a very old man sitting under a tree telling his story. So the dream that he'd kept since he was 9 years old, 70 years later, he recognized that he had lived it out. This is incredible resilience and the ability to move with reality, to welcome what's coming and not hold to fixed ideas of how we meet it. He's an exemplary model for us about how you move into old age and or adulthood and old age and still shift and adapt like a chickadee. We don't hold on to the old style. He didn't, for instance, choose to lose his life on the battleground as the last statement of what a dignified Crow warrior would do. He chose to become like a chickadee and take care of his flock. It's the most courageous thing I can imagine. Being willing to change is the most courageous thing I can imagine. So those stories are helping me even expand my idea of what Sangha life is about. And I hope they're of some usefulness for you too. Thank you very much.
Let's see what time it is. Do you have some interest in comments or questions?
Yes, I have total.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome.
I have a question of where the crow live.
Montana and Wyoming.
Oh, right, you said that.
And that is where they wanted to go. And so part of the current pride of the Crow people is that that's their chosen land. And that was the heart of their territory, even before white people pushed them, limited their territory to that area. So they're very happy. There was never a trail of tears for the Crow people, and they were never defeated by the white army. Part of how the Crow people can be criticized by people who would do that is that they actually allied themselves with white army to fight their traditional enemies, the Sioux and the Arapaho. So they are a warlike people, but not anymore. You know, they're chickadee people.
Thank you. Anyone? Everyone? Don't be shy.
Deborah, hi.
Hi. Hey, Gaelyn, it's very nice to see you. I practiced with you many years ago.
It's
Green
great
Gulch.
to see you, Deborah. Yes.
Lovely to see you. I
Lovely.
guess I was very moved by your story of the Crow leader, and I've always felt, I'm in North Carolina now, and I work with a lot of older people, and so much of their lives is home alone watching TV.
Mhm.
And I find it so, it's just interesting, that progression of, I mean, I hate to say white people, but most of them that are alone are white people, and just our culture at large, we're so isolated and so lonely, and it's such a big obstacle. And I feel so lucky that I have Zen Sangha and other things, but I don't even know what my question is. I feel helpless often in the face of just how our culture is. And you know, I can give them suggestions, but there's just a core problem, I think. So I don't know if you have thoughts on that, and also I was struck by dogs do not have Buddha nature. I feel like dogs are Buddha nature.
You're right. They do have Buddha nature. Everything is Buddha nature. That's
Right. You did say that after. Here's my dog. So she's.
I think it is one of the most important, it's a problem. Luckily, a lot of people are recognizing it. You yourself are just recognizing it. And so there's a lot of interest in, one of our members here is a geriatrician. She's a professor of gerontology in Alabama. the psychology of geriatrics life. And people now know that the way to remain vibrant is to be in community and social gatherings. And I think that this is one of the strong teachings from Buddhism. We don't have to call it Buddhism, but this is one of the strong things, at least as important as mindfulness being offered to our culture. So for those of us who are in Sangha like we are, we know it's challenging. If you don't think it's challenging, it will become challenging. Sangha life is challenging, but to make choices to protect it and stay in it, we can study that process and bring it out to other people. Tell people how important it is to be together. It's the best way to stay vibrant and resilient. So, yeah, I could say a lot about that because I'm quite interested in it, but you're right. And so just keep telling people, get them to go to the social events nearby, make friends. Even a few friends will enhance life at whatever age. Thank you, Deborah. So good to see you.
So good to see you, Gaelyn. Thank you.
This conversation makes me think about how being part of a Sangha makes me be part of a whole and then see a bigger whole. And that sense of isolation where we don't see ourselves connected in any way to neighbors, a broader community, to the world as a whole. And I think that is one of the things that we lose is how do you have a community? And a community you can have conflict within, but a community that you can be part of that makes you see the interconnection, both small group and larger. It doesn't just make it, I don't want a Sangha that closes in and is, only makes me see that group. So there's an interesting balance that has to happen, that a good leader and being able to see the bigger picture.
Well said, well said. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And these links mean that, like here we are, Houston or Texas and North Carolina, here we are. And this network now goes all across the continent and around the world. So wherever you are, you can dip into a Sangha. And another thing though, I've been thinking about recently, sometimes we have people here in our group and then they have to move because Houston is a very transient community. It's got a lot of people who've lived here for a long time, but people will come here for work and then move somewhere else. And it can be challenging opening up to a new Sangha when you move to a new part of the world. And I think about that because I really think that people should open up to new Sangha experiences. And I think about it in terms of, these days, I'm thinking about it in terms of the kind of emotional regulation that we get from our friends. Your friends will help you emotionally regulate. Should I be anxious about this? And your friends will say, oh, no, that's okay, or something. We emotionally regulate. And the same thing can happen in our Sanghas. We can help ourselves deal with like climate change anxiety and all sorts of things. We can regulate. And then to go to a new Sangha means we have to learn a new language of the new people. And it's a difficult one to step across. And I've actually seen cases where, well, I'm not going to practice with this new Sangha because it's not like my old Sangha. That's something that Plenty Crew did not do. He set up a new way for the community to regulate themselves under the new terms. And it's such an example of courage for me, not to be tempted, or maybe there was temptation, but not to stick to the old ways of doing things that worked when we can see it's limiting us now. Or like Deborah said, when your friends are drifting away, and you have to make new friends and you have to enter new social settings, it's a huge leap of faith to know that these new people that I don't know yet, they don't know me yet, that's good for your well-being. So those of us who now know this, I mean, we know it for ourselves. We take the risk of being in a Sangha. We have a gift to give people to encourage them to take those courageous steps. I think we should be writing about Sangha all the time. So Teja Sama, I'm so happy that you're doing this for a year. It's one of our most important offerings to the world. And it's not built on, like Thich Nhat Hanh, I think, said, the next Buddha will be Sangha. Maitreya Buddha will be Sangha. And that's what this means. Edo-san.
I really appreciate all this talk and discernment about Sangha and what it is. And in my own experience, that's been an ongoing question, and one that often changes, or not often, but has changed, because I live in Minneapolis, and my primary Sangha is in Bloomington, Indiana, Sanshinji, which has been closed for 2 years. So I keep in connection with them as much as I can via Zoom, and but it would be easy to be isolated, even in spite of Zoom, you know. And so there are 4 Sanghas here in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and I'm acquainted with all of them, and but I'm not officially a regular member of any of them. But what I have done is I'm in about 4 study groups, and the participants, some are distant and some are local, and even the local one includes people from different Sanghas, or people who actually don't think they have a Sangha. And so we have become a Sangha, you know, for each other. And I really appreciate that. And so do the people who have been a little bit lost and are trying to connect with somebody, somebody who has a similar path. And so that's, and also coming here on some Saturdays is part of that, my reaching out to try to be connected with people all over. And Zoom has made that possible, which is very nice. Also, I just wanted to share something that Roshi Okamura said to me once when I was younger and I was struggling with being a parent and having a full-time career, and then feeling like those things were somehow separate from it and taking me away from my practice because I wasn't at the Zen center enough. And now we all know the answer to that, but still sometimes it helps to hear it. And he said, just relax, that your Sangha right now is the people who need you the most. And that is your family and your clients. And that really helped, even though I knew that, it really helped me to start living my life as my practice and not seeing it as something separate from that. And it really changed my whole attitude about what I was doing, and to be able to give myself more like 100% to what I was doing and not think I should be elsewhere, and that the practice was elsewhere. So I just, that was a profound for me transformation. And so I just wanted to share that.
Lisa, why don't you just go ahead?
Okay. I just wanted to say thank you for the stories today. Really touched me. And I also just wanted to express that the only Sangha I've ever experienced has been through Zoom. I as they all know, that I found them. And so now it's interesting, the anxiety of, will this go away as places are opening up and people are gathering in person. Then unlike, I live in Virginia, I'm nowhere close to the group, so to speak. And so it's interesting. I'm starting to feel that anxiety of, am I going to lose this at some point? So that's, to me, is an interesting question to just kind of put out there of welcome change, right? Of that anxiety if it's going to happen probably at some point. But it'd be nice to continue to nourish and have this space. So not really a question, just a comment, I guess. I'm not hearing you.
Galen, if you're speaking, you somehow muted. Try again.
You're muted.
There. Can't hear you. What? Uh-oh, she's pointing to something. What's she pointing to?
She was saying the host has muted her in the chat. Trey?
Who's
maybe?
the host? Am I the host?
Or
Wait a minute.
or Trey, maybe?
Well, I'm a co-host.
Oh,
but
you're
I don't
co-host.
think I've muted anyone.
Sorry, I didn't mean to accuse you.
That's okay. I mean, who knows?
Yeah. Just one of you click on the participant button and look and see if she's muted on your end.
I'm too long.
I think there might be something wrong with your microphone, Konjin, because
Okay, Trey, I'm making you the host. See if you can figure this out.
Okay. Okay. Well, I do see the option to mute, but it doesn't look like you're muted, Reverend Konjin.
Well, maybe that means we're done.
I had an idea. What, Trey, why don't you unmute everybody for a moment, see if that jiggles anything?
Sure.
I don't think he can do that.
I can.
How's this? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
we can hear
Oh,
Yes.
okay. All right. Thank you, host,
Yay.
or whatever. Thank you, somebody. Great spirit for unmuting me. Well, thank you. I want to thank Lisa for sharing that anxiety, because I think I'm hearing this from a lot of people, and including people who live around the corner from Houston Zen Center. They still like the option of Zoom. So we're going to have to come up with a way to meet this. So the answer, at least here, will not be to only return to in-person, which some people are advocating. We'll only have in-person meeting, but that's just falling into our old concepts. And then how do we navigate this territory where we want to keep you connected to Great Tree and still not, it's going to require a huge technical expertise at all of our centers. So we're facing a new world.
Well,
Right, Teja-san?
yes, but I should say, Lisa, we've already got a hybrid setup and we're already doing it. So if Great Tree is your Sangha or one of your Sanghas, it's not going to go away. We're going to have some things only in person, like the sewing retreat. But generally speaking, we're expecting, we have a big screen here. I'll turn it around. See our big screen? Can you see it?
Yes.
Does it show? Yeah. We've got a big screen so that there's interaction between the people who are here and the people who are on screen. And we used it last weekend for Sesshin, and I thought it worked quite well. Trey, you might want to weigh in on that. So I don't know whether you've got anything like that set up at Houston yet, but it actually works quite well. We got a microphone so that you can hear the people in the room. And we've got a big screen so that the people in the room can see the people on the screen, and the people on the screen can see the people in the room.
That's great. So Lisa is happy.
Yeah, if we're your Sangha, Lisa, don't worry. So I just heard my 11 o'clock mindfulness bell, and I, for one, have to go because I have to get out to the prison. So thank you so much for coming, Gaelyn. And because I know you're a really busy person with the International Center. So thank you.
I'm so glad. Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you, Jodo. It's good to see you here too.
And those are really wonderful comments. So we're going to give back the merit, and we do this by call and response, but it's probably better if only one person does the response. Oh yeah, Chris, you can do it. Rengetsu. May the merit of this practice
May the merit of this practice
benefit all beings
benefit all beings
and bring peace.
and bring peace.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And thank you very much for your comments, Gaelyn. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care.